Atayenda, Atayenda, Atayenda. Atayenda, Atayenda, Atayenda. Atayenda, Atayenda, Atayenda. We acknowledge the East this morning and the element of air. Give an acknowledgement to our Oversoul Spirit team and the connectivity to all that was, all that is, all that will forever be. The South Cardinal and the element of fire. The element of fire that reminds us of that protective presence that's always, always over us. All sent to destroy, bring ill will, is destroyed at its core. Its energies transmuted and transformed to serve us in this moment. The element of fire. Element of fire. Element of fire. The element of water that's cleansing and purifying, enriching us, purifying us. The element of water, the West Cardinal, reminding us of the ebb and flow and of the abundance that there is. There is an abundance and plethora of wisdom by which we always know what to do in any given moment at any time. Always, always, always knows what to do. That's reminding us that we are, I am. And no matter what is happening in the moment, we are. And then the element of earth. The earth that reminds us time and time again that we are. Time and time again. Our ancestors, who we stand as a strong representation of. Strong representation of today. And as today is a Saturday, Saturn day, we acknowledge the element and the energy of Saturn. And we're grateful for the energy of Saturn. Our oversouls, our ancestors, the energies known and unknown that are assisting us. Assisting us in connecting our connectivity so that we are able to trust ourselves in every moment. The decisions that are made are made. The outcome that it will produce is not there yet. So it's in motion. And that by it being in motion, it allows us to know that at any given time we can change what's currently happening. We don't always have to accept what is allowed. Even in our allowance, there is still the acceptance and the rejection. We allowed and we can choose to reject. We allow and we can choose to accept. We can pick it apart to the points that we choose and want to accept. Why we do what we do, how we do what we do. what we do, why we do it. Allowance, acceptance, allowance, rejection. Our connection to truly that which is all. And as we are connecting, or as we are allowing that connection to flow to us, because I'm reminded we are always connected, we are never cut off, but we choose to allow and accept what we allow, or we choose to reject that which we allow. So as we connect with the energies of Saturn, our ancestors, our oversouls, the entities, energies known and unknown, some call them deities, some call them God, some call them demons, some call them angels. Whatever you choose to call that which assists you in this moment, we acknowledge and choose them all now on this Saturn Saturday. As we connect to them and connect into our oversouls and ancestors, the clearing and purification has begun. We allow the breaking down, we allow the destruction. Destructing that which was sent to destroy us, destructing that which is within us. Ah, 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 ah. Ah, 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 ah. Destructing that which is within us that no longer serves us, that we have tried so hard to hold on to. And things keep arising that brings out these reactions time and time again. And it's directly and indirectly telling us it's time to let go. It is time to let go. Clearing and purifying that which no longer serves us. And as we clear out and we purify ourselves, we lovingly and willingly allow the acceptance of healing. Healing from an energetical standpoint. Healing, 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 healing. We allow that healing on this Saturn Saturday. Healing, 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 healing. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. For the next 3 minutes and 33 seconds, I want you to envision a blue beam of light coming from beneath you. You can't see where it begins, you can't see where it ends. You're just seeing flowing up from beneath you. And then from up above, a gold beam, a gold beam. Again, you can't see where it begins, you can't see where it ends. And you just envision that blue and gold beam coming to that navel, that center space of where you are. That center space of where you are. And just allow it. A blue and gold beam just spinning and working together. 3 minutes, 33 seconds. Just allow that to do what it has to do. I'll be chanting Atayenda, always alive, actively transforming all, yielding everything now, doing all. As you focus in on Atayenda, just see that blue and yellow beam, that blue and gold beam, and allow it to do its work within you, clearing, purifying, healing. Allow it to spread throughout. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. Atayenda, 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 atayenda. 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 Atayenda, 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 atayenda. As we continue to focus and allow that blue and gold beam to do what they're doing through your body in no particular manner that I am predicting. Just for you to allow that allowing. And it's for you to do all that needs to be done. Allowing that which is the totality of you. Allowing that which is the totality of me. Allowing me to rise up in the midst of it all. Allowing me to come forth in all of it. It's about me, 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 me. In each moment, it's about the totality of all that we are. Our oversouls, our ancestors, Sekhmet, Kalima, Paiman. We acknowledge them in this moment for the added work that they're doing with us. They're in our lives in this moment. And some believe that we always have to call them forth. I believe neither way, I just acknowledge them. And from acknowledging them in my life, Sekhmet, Paiman, and the greatest mother, Kalima, the things that she has allowed to surface that I can destroy. And the energies from them, how we are transmuting and transforming them to serve us in this time. Allow the blue, allow the gold to do what it has to do. Allow the blue, allow the gold to do what it has to do. And as the blue and gold delivers what it has to deliver, allow that passion to stir up from our heart space. That red fluorescent color to flow through our entire body, expanding from our heart space. To bring the healing that is so desired. As the blue and gold do the clearing, does the purifying. That red, fluorescent red stemming from our heart space fills us up with the healing we so desire. minute, 11 seconds of silence. Oh, you're not hearing my voice, you're just hearing the music in the background. As we wrap this meditation up, we know it's here that we can come back to it at any time. Declaring the purification, the healing, and now the protection that stands over us. A protective shield that's force that's around us that cannot and will not be removed. Protection just reminds us that we stand strong, impenetrable, untouchable in all that we are. We allow, we accept, we allow, we accept, we allow, we accept.